goes on and prays in chapter 3 for these Ephesians Christians that I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, and then verse 18, may have the power together with all the saints to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge. Yeah. So the unfathomable depths of the riches of God. And I guess when we meditate upon God, upon the Word, the living Word, Jesus Christ, we get deeper into that which is unfathomable. Yeah. So there's a bit of mystery still left there, Doug.
Absolutely.
But not that kind of stuff you're talking about. Not mysticism.
That's right, yeah. No, I just want to emphasise that I think the danger is we come back to this rationalist movement that says we can understand and know everything about God, which is a nonsense. Yeah. Because actually God is much bigger. Yeah. Can any man truly, know God in that sense, know all about God? And so actually I want to hold on to that fact that there is mystery, and I enjoy that. And actually the danger is we don't want to leave what we can understand, leave what we can put in a box. And I think our imaginations are God-given and therefore used rightly, that actually they can lead us into.
But how do you tie that up with those? Let's read those scriptures in 2 Corinthians 10, because I think this is where I would see. Because in my walk and in my encouragement for Christians to walk, I would not encourage them to allow their imaginations to run riot. No. And my basis would be here. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. Yeah. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. Yeah. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ.
Absolutely.
And it seems to me that one of the, and I know from obviously in the whole sin realm, one of the real battlegrounds are our minds, because of what goes in there, and we allow it to go around, and if I just want to let that imagination run riot, and I'm not saying you do, but can you see the problem I'm having there?
Something of that is what we feed our minds, and many of us, I think, are in the age where so much is available through television, through internet, through different forms of media. The temptation is we feed our mind with things that are of the world, and actually what I'm talking about is actually a purity that actually we're focusing our minds on Christ.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess I need
Paul
to
says that we should think on those things that are noble, those things that are good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that I hope that's what Barney's getting at. I'm sure it is. That it's Christ-centered, so we think more deeply and profoundly about Christ, and allow that to conform us to Him and His image, not to the world.
Yes.
We need to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that's where we need to take wrong thinking captive.
Yes. I guess the fruit of it, Doug, is in our context. I'm seeing people grow closer in relationship to Christ. I'm not seeing anybody go through that experience and going off on any sort of, tangent in that sense.
Yeah, and I was because it is true in the end. I mean, I always talk about two things, because I've dealt with a lot of that which is false over the years. I always deal with two things: one, where does it come from, and two, where does it lead to?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be very obvious it comes from a place that's not of Christ. Sometimes it's not that obvious, but I think where it leads to is always obvious, because it, as you say, if what was happening in those people's lives were taking them away from Christ and His principles and His work, that would really show that what was happening was wrong.
And I think where it leads to is a good point, because I think actually we're to judge by the fruits, and it's interesting that I mentioned a retired pastor friend of mine who joined our church, and more out of kind of intrigue, I think, and had a whole history behind him of being a minister of what you might call inherited churches, and he came along to us in his 70s, and and him and his wife, and fair play to them, they came and they critiqued it, and they sharpened me, because I had to think about stuff with this guy who knew what he was talking about. Really sharpened me by asking some difficult questions. But at the end of it, they became very committed. They became on the leadership of our core team, because he said, I can see God at work. I can't argue anymore.
Right. Yeah. We're joined on the line now by Sarah. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Hello, Doug. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Interesting subject of contemplative. I can't say the word.
Contemplative. Yes.
Contemplating before God.
Yeah.
In the scriptures, God says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you.
Yeah.
I think as you contemplate him, you are drawing near to him. Obviously, yes, you've got to have that bedrock of scriptural knowledge. It's interesting, when I wasn't a Christian, I came from an Anglican background, and I suppose I was raised as a Christian, but it hadn't yet become real to me. And I used to follow certain traditions with my mother, such as going to the Easter garden on Maundy Thursday and sitting quietly in the church with her for an hour. And as I began to question in myself, as young people do, about the faith and wanting it to be real to me, I went back to that. This particular Maundy Thursday, before Good Friday, I sat up for an hour on my own. My husband and my children were in bed. And I sat there and I just thought about him in the garden and everything he must have been going through in Gethsemane and what lay ahead of him as he had to face the cross. And as I sat there, just thinking about those things, the perfume of the Lord just filled the room.
Wow.
And I couldn't really say that I had a strong faith or anything. I was inquiring.
Marvelous.
And I found that sitting there and just drawing close to him and thinking of him in such ways has helped me.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. That's lovely.
I think there's a really important point that Sarah brings up, and that's in terms of trying to reach the people of our age. Again, in a rationalist age, it was right to give process courses that were knowledge bound and knowledge driven, because that's where people were at. They were trying to rationalise life. Actually, in a postmodern age, we have an open, and we can critique the postmodern age. I'm not buying into it fully, but one of the good things about it is that people are open to those experiences outside. There is that sense of spirituality that is open to the experiential.
Yes.
And I think this is an area that actually we can engage with that culture, that people want to come and experience the spiritual. They want to experience Christ. And yes, that needs to be then followed up with the knowledge and the understanding behind it. But it's about at what point do we engage with people.
Yeah.
And God is engaged with Sarah at that point, that experiential point.
Yes. And of course what she was doing was, in one sense, biblical meditation, because although she didn't actually have, she didn't say, but she didn't, as far as we know, have a Bible open, she was meditating on that which the scriptures had told her about.
The Gethsemane account.
The Gethsemane.
Absolutely.
And again, these are the areas I don't. This is really what I want to hear, because I don't have a problem with those. I've had such experiences over the years myself, like